Hello, I'm Ross King, author of Leonardo and the Last Supper, and I'm here at the Cheltenham Festival of Literature. I had done an earlier book on Leonardo da Vinci, which was kind of his table talk, his jokes, his funny stories, his riddles, his prophecies, things like that. And I got very interested in Leonardo at the court and being a courtier. But I think even more than that, I was interested in the Last Supper as a work of art. I mean, it's become an icon, and what became clear to me as I began doing research is that before it was an icon, it was a very fraught subject for Leonardo. It was a very fraught thing that he was working on, because we tend to abstract great works of art from the conditions of their production and imagine that in 1494, when Leonardo got the commission, of course he was going to create a masterpiece. He was Leonardo da Vinci. But in fact, it wasn't that easy for him. He had a lot of logistical problems, first of all, and then a lot of personal problems as he began work. So it was something that was never fait accompli. And what I wanted to do then was to track him over the course of the 2, 3, 4 years from the time he got the commission to the time that he finished the work of art, and show the arc of his career during those years. And as I describe in the book, those were absolutely crucial years for him personally, and maybe even more so professionally. And so it was really that aspect, the combination of his character and the painting, these two icons, because Leonardo himself, of course, is an icon, the icon of Leonardo and the icon of the painting, and how they came together at that particular time before either one was an icon. I think anyone who writes about Leonardo now has to take Dan Brown into account. It's entered the popular imagination, and Dan Brown tells it's a wonderful, appealing idea of Mary Magdalene and Christ and the baby, and that Christ, who we know as the Christ child, that we know the most famous baby in history, and the fact that he then could have had a baby as well and been a father, and that Mary Magdalene, the repentant prostitute, could have become a mother. It's a story that has a great appeal. Sadly, it's not true at all. And so I wanted to maybe let people down a bit gently. But the true story is actually very interesting as well. The way Leonardo presents people, the way he shows men, women, adolescents, boys and girls, I think is absolutely fascinating. And maybe one of the things that I was concerned to do in the book, even more than say, no, it's not a girl, it's a boy. St. John was always portrayed like that. And so you can't, I think, after seeing all of the Last Suppers that came before that, still maintain that that is a woman. But I also wanted to show that Leonardo was not as heretical as we tend to think of him. We read back 5 centuries, and with the benefit of hindsight, and looking at him through the lens piece of our secular age, I think we want to say, of course, Leonardo was an atheist and a heretic, and he didn't believe all of that. But in fact, it appears he did. Many of his statements, and I quote some of them, many of his statements in his notebooks show that he clearly had an interest in religion. He was interested in interrogating certain aspects of it, but he was also interested in developing those ideas and showing what he could do with those ideas artistically. Because the first thing he did when he got the commission for the Last Supper was to buy a copy of the Bible. And that's very telling on a number of counts. First of all, usually what you did if you got a Last Supper commission or a crucifixion or a nativity scene, anything like that, is you went and looked at all the other examples of it, of which there were numerous examples. Leonardo went back to the original source. He went back to get the gospel truth, literally. And he read, I think there's every indication he read the Gospels. And what he found there was a much more compelling, emotional, intense scene than he saw in any Last Supper paintings. And so I think he really wanted to bring the Gospel of St. John, the Gospel of St. Matthew, Luke and John. He wanted to bring them to life in a way that they had not been by anyone else, and make them much, much more powerful. Religious art maybe has a problem today because of the fact that we live in a secular age. And I think it has a problem also because we tend to abstract it from, sometimes literally, the place that it was painted for, the audience for whom it was painted. Literally in the case, because many altarpieces are now in museums, so they're in secular institutions, and it's very easy then to go into the Uffizi in Florence or the National Gallery in London or in Washington and look at the works of art and see, and then move into a different room where you have secular paintings and look at them in the same light, look at them only in terms of color, form, the use of the human body in them, and not in terms of whatever religious iconography can be found in them. And the religious iconography in many ways has been lost over the centuries. There was a whole language of gesture that existed in the Middle Ages in painting, and we've only gone a very, very short way to recovering that and to understanding it. And so we look at these paintings through very different eyes than the first audience, for example, for the Last Supper. The first audience for that was a band of Dominican friars in Milan, and also maybe courtiers under Lodovico Sforza. And so we come to it with a very different sort of baggage than they do. And I think the fact that we can still enjoy the paintings, if we've jettisoned so much of this, what's left? And what's left is the power of the image. And so I think it's a tribute to Leonardo da Vinci or Piero della Francesco or Fra Angelico, all of whom were very religious painters. And in the case of Fra Angelico, a very religious man. He was actually a friar himself. That they could create images which 5, 6 centuries later still speak to us on some level. And it's not wrong for us to interpret them on that level and to understand them, appreciate them from a secular point of view and on their formal qualities alone or on their iconic qualities. But I think we have to understand that they weren't always seen like that. There was another way to look at them as well, which was equally valid. I would love to do another novel. It's been over a decade since my last novel, but I think once a novelist, always a novelist. You're never an ex-novelist. And so I do have a couple of ideas, and I'd be very interested in doing another novel. I'm not sure it would be my next book, but I think in the next book or two, I would love to do another one. And so yes, watch this space. I love e-readers. I love being able to download a book. I love the convenience of being able to carry something very slim around with me when I'm on an airplane, so I can have 5 or 6 books for an airplane flight. But for me, that has never quite, and even browsing online, has never replaced the pleasure you get walking into a bookshop, where you get the smell of the bookshop, and you can see all of the books, you can browse the shelves, you can pull them off and actually handle them. And in places like my favorite bookshop, my local bookshop is the Woodstock bookshop in Woodstock in Oxfordshire, and it comes with something that I think no e-store can ever give you, and that is expertise. That the shop owner, Rachel, knows everything about every book ever written, it seems. And so you get very good advice from her if you're looking for yourself, for reading, or for a gift. And so I think that's something that is simply, that's something that cannot be put onto a computer or an iPad, that kind of expertise and quality of judgment.